Hi, everybody, and welcome to Deep Customization of Hub and Enterprise Sites. My name is Graham Hudgens, and I'm a product engineer on the Hub team. And with me is Justin Prather, our design lead for Hub and Enterprise Sites. We have a great agenda for you. We're going to walk through, at a really high level, a quick overview of the two applications. We'll take a look at a lot of examples, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty with curating your site in the content library and best practices around data, designing your layout with tips and tricks, some of the great two-way engagement features available in Hub Premium, and we'll end with some integration resources, ways to automate both some of the things we do today as well as other things, as well as ways to integrate Hub functionality into your own website platform. And we'll leave you with lots of resources, so feel free to use this agenda as a sort of way to skip around if you're looking for something specific. So ArcGIS Hub is an easy-to-configure cloud platform for organizations to collaborate with their communities to accomplish information-driven initiatives or projects. The key here is we're trying to engage with the non-GIS user using these websites to coordinate some of your information from ArcGIS Online. Very similarly, ArcGIS Enterprise Sites is a capability in Enterprise that lets you make the same websites and web pages to also feature content from your portal to the non-GIS audience. So kind of the similar type of user is going to be using this application to get at some of your portal or ArcGIS Online content. ArcGIS Hub is a part of ArcGIS Online included in two flavors. There's the basic version, which has the sites and pages capability, which can be used for open or private data sharing. And we have Hub Premium, which we'll talk about later. It adds primarily the ability to sign up community identities so that they can attend events, follow your sites, participate with some privately shared content via Teams, or provide feedback or even edit some of your featured data. So kind of reaching out and working with people outside of your organization. Enterprise Sites is very similar in that it extracts that Hub website and page tech and puts it in your enterprise deployment. And I often get asked when to use either. So Hub is great if you can use ArcGIS Online. There's no credit burning or consumption of people using the sites frequently. That's all on Esri to manage, so it's kind of nice in that way. Hub also leads enterprise sites in features and functionality. Kind of nature of the beast of being an online product is we can release to it as soon as features are ready, whereas enterprise gets features twice a year. Hub is optimized for the web. We've done some things to make sure your pages and sites are ranked high in Google if they're public. And we also cache certain resources in our content distribution network for advanced performance. And it contains three subsystems that aren't yet in enterprise. Those are, we can support multiple custom domains in the Hub application. We also have an expanded download system, which can go from your data stored in your feature services into a variety of formats for public data. And we have an improved search experience over the platform. These are all things we're going to try to fold into enterprise sites, but it's going to take us a little time. Hub also has the Hub Premium functionality we'll talk about later. So if you're on the enterprise sites side of the house, you might consider using that. If your IT policy prevents you from using ArcGIS Online, you need to be on your own network with full control of all the great pieces of ArcGIS Enterprise, the web adapter, the portal, all the different components of server and whatnot. So now I'm going to turn it over to Justin. No better way to get started than to get a art of the possible. And Justin's going to walk us through some examples. So Justin, why don't you take it away?
Thank you, Graham. Let's walk through Hub examples. First, here's a theme we'll explore throughout the coming examples. Hub is used by ArcGIS Online and enterprise customers primarily to build bridges between their existing outward-facing digital presence and their authoritative data. When leveraged well, Hub fills the gap of a system that empowers you to inform, listen, and monitor your goals and how your audience engages with those goals. Over the past few slides here, I've shown you how the city of Raleigh, North Carolina connected the dots. They built a bridge between their existing Raleigh government site and their authoritative data by using Hub to inform and engage their community and to monitor goals together. So what's possible with Hub and building communication bridges? What are people building? Well, let's take a look. Hub sites across the globe vary in their visual design, layout, storytelling, goals, functionality, and content. Internally, it's difficult to know how organizations are leveraging Hub, as they're obviously not publicly accessible. However, we know from interacting with these customers that they're working on very similar patterns as those who are external. I'm going to show you 3 types of examples of sites. First, I'll show you sites that are blending and integrating into existing web properties. Second, I'll show you examples featuring custom branding. Last, we'll look at how sites are building bridges through informing, engaging, and monitoring. Whether your site is external or internal, there's a great opportunity to blend and integrate your Hub site into your organization's website or content management system, or your organization's central wiki or SharePoint. In either case, you have the opportunity to connect your Hub site to what your audience already knows and trusts as your digital presence. Here's 2 quick examples of our clients linking from their existing sites to their Hub sites. Here we have the website of Mayor Muriel Bowser of Washington, D.C. at mayor.dc.gov. As we scroll through her site, we see information about the mayor, press releases, news. Then when we get down to this section by the numbers, we see 6 areas of topics. If we go into any of these topics, we're taken to Washington, D.C.'s main hub site, opendata.dc. We're on a specific page that they've created for these areas of topics. Just to highlight again, Washington, D.C. has integrated their hub site into one of their main existing web properties. Next, let's go on to Johns Creek, Georgia. On their services and resources page, you'll notice 2 things that are very prominent. First, visually, they have a large image that has prominently shown their Johns Creek Data Hub and the screenshot of that laptop that someone's typing on. Second, you have a link, Explore Johns Creek Data Hub, right there. This is on their existing site. A very apparent visual, a very apparent call to action to go to their hub site. So as we take that action, we will arrive at datahub.johnscreek.gov, where we can explore their authoritative data. Now I want to demonstrate a few integration tactics that people are using with their sites. I'm going to call out 2 things. First, users are leveraging custom URLs. And second, they're aligning with their organization's branding guidelines. Now, their branding guidelines might include fonts, colors, layout patterns, logos, and more. And depending on your specific organization, you might have strict or loose branding guidelines that you must abide to. So let's speed walk through 3 sites and see how they're blending in with their organization's existing websites. We're going to look at the Hub User Lab, the state of Maryland, and NatureServe. Shameless plug time. This is the Hub User Lab. This is a program run by my team where people can sign up to participate in helping us improve the Hub product. Now pay attention to the URL, hubuserlab.esri.com. We purposely added a custom URL for this hub site so that the esri.com domain would lend inherent credibility to our program. If you'd like to participate, come here to this URL and sign up today. You'll notice here the Maryland logo, Maryland colors. This is their main government site at maryland.gov. This is their hub site for Maryland Department of Transportation, State Highway Administration. They have many hub sites for various projects around the state of Maryland. Notice here how the colors, how the logo are coming into their site. Next, we have NatureServe. You'll notice here within NatureServe their color, their logo, their fonts, and how at their hub site, how those colors, logos, and fonts are also very evident. This is a really fun section for me, given that part of my background is in advertising. Some of our clients are personalizing their sites through custom branding. First, I'll show you examples of sites with branded names. Then, I'll show you sites with custom logos. Here we have the main hub site for the city of Los Angeles, the Los Angeles GeoHub. GeoHub is probably one of the more common branding terms that we see for our clients. You'll also notice the custom URL at the top, geohub.lacity.org. Trustworthiness baked right into the URL. Let's return to Johns Creek, Georgia, and their Data Hub. Data Hub is the way that they've branded their main hub site. You'll also notice their custom URL of datahub.johnscreekga.gov. Next, we have the Africa Geoportal. Also notice they don't have a subdomain, they have a whole URL owned for this hub site. Geoportal is another fairly common branding that we have found for hub sites. Here's another site that we've already seen, Open Data DC. Two things here I wanted to note for you. First, they're describing or branding their site as Open Data. This is probably the most common branding or way to describe a hub site that we've seen. Second, what a beautiful logo that they've used. Next, we'll go on to the city of Brampton, Ontario in Canada. Pay attention to the name GeoHub, the logo, and the custom URLs. I started talking about Hub building communication bridges and showed how Raleigh is doing that by informing, engaging, and monitoring. But now let's go deeper. Let's explore some other examples. Here's the hub site for the California State Geoportal. This site features data from all across California. It allows users to explore data by categories, very visually. Here we have the main hub site for the city of Tempe. This is where they are informing their public of all of their GIS open data. You can explore the data through categories or search. Here we have a hub site for the city of Topeka, Kansas. This is one site they call Open Budget, where they are informing their public about the operating budget for the city. This is one of a few hub sites that Topeka is using to inform their public. I also want to call out their usage of a custom URL, budget.topeka.org. Now onto examples of engagement. Here's Volunteer Escondido. Escondido uses this hub site to engage with its community over volunteer opportunities in the city. Not only can people learn about volunteer opportunities, they can suggest other ways to volunteer, sign up to volunteer, and can register to attend events. Escondido is also capturing and communicating metrics on volunteer activity. One Shared Story is a nonprofit in rural Virginia focused on creating an inclusive community. They are engaging their Fluvanna County community through this hub site by enabling people to report on historic cemeteries and to share personal family stories that represent hidden narratives of the county's history. The Urban Wood Reuse is an initiative by Washington, D.C., where the city takes trees that need to be removed and repurposes their wood for use in D.C. schools. They are reducing waste and giving the trees a second chance. Not only can you request a wood product for your school, but you can monitor the progress of the initiative in the city. Now, to complete our circuit of examples, here are sites demonstrating monitoring of goals. Here we have a site for the city of Zwolle in the Netherlands. This initiative's purpose is to mobilize residents to measure conditions relevant to climate change. The Zwolle community can get involved and monitor the progress of the initiative. Next, we have a site out of Colombia focused on the goal of planting 5 million trees. This site informs Colombian citizens about the initiative and allows them to monitor the progress of reaching its goal. Next, we have another site from Escondido, California, Homelessness and Housing through their Community Advisory Group. Through this site, the city is communicating the current state of homelessness, equipping citizens with resources, enabling the community to share ideas, and providing metrics to monitor. Lastly, did you know that Tucson, Arizona is currently in a solar blitz? Well, here's a site where the city is not only informing the public about solar projects, they are also equipping citizens to monitor the progress of installations in the city. Now I'll send it back to Graham to talk about the basics of building a site.
So let's get going with the basics. And my recommendation here is to build something with no plan to get a feel for things, just to get a quick orientation around the app. We'll fly through this section since probably most of you are here for some deeper insight than that. And if you're interested in more detail here, check out the Getting Started with Hub and Enterprise Sites video instead. But to make your first site, you'll need to be a creator user with these privileges. And optionally, if you can have these two privileges here at the bottom, you'll be able to do even more things like getting others involved in your sites and pushing users into groups as you share your content via the Hub and Sites Teams feature. If you're looking for the app, it's in the app launcher in ArcGIS Online or Portal. And currently in Online, we have a Sites option in the Create menu. And when you go to the app, you'll land on this screen called Overview, which is how you can return to your previous work and serves as a sort of lighthouse for all of the sites that you've created within Enterprise Sites or Hub. So let's take a really quick look at that. Here I am in ArcGIS Online, and you can see I can come up here to Hub, and when I click that, I'm taken to Overview, and this is where I can see here in the left-hand side my recents. I can see some cards. If I have Hub Premium, I get this extra card here, as well as a premium dashboard about all of the community users I've signed up. And if I wanted to make a site, I'll click this new button, and I'll be able to either make one via a name and clicking Create, or I can, if I have Hub Premium, click Browse Templates and browse template sites. This is a feature that we're hoping to add to Enterprise in an upcoming release. So say I pick this citizen problem reporter template and I activate it. Now I get landed on the site's layout, and there will always be a starter layout, but you can totally customize the site from here. Once you're in a particular site, you have this blue bar and edit navigation, and there's very different sections of each site, each with their own purpose. Depending on which application you're using, Hub Premium or Hub Basic or Enterprise Sites, the list may be a little shorter, just depending on the features. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of each of these areas. We'll just fly through it. The dashboard exposes some key analytics and is only available in online because we can centralize analytics about your sites for you. We have the Teams section, which exposes the ability to bring others into your site. By default, we make a core team if you have the right user privileges, and inside of each team, you can add members, which behind the scenes is just sharing the item via a group. So just kind of a convenience function. You'll notice I can use this menu to go back to the site, and I can keep browsing using the edit navigation to events. Events is where I can create events, and these are basically places that you can use to sign up your community users to attend a specific physical event. So an event description, and I can pick who's organizing it, where it'll happen, and I can also pick a time, obviously. And these can be unlimited or have fixed capacity and all that good stuff. If you're interested in hearing more about engagement, there is an Engaging Your Community talk that you can search for that goes in a lot of depth about how to use the Hub engagement feature. Events is definitely one of those features that is for Hub Premium, so it's not yet in Enterprise Sites or it's not included in Hub Basic. We give you an easy way to launch surveys, so I can come here and click Create a Survey. What's nice about the surveys I already have created is we also let you edit the survey in context of this edit navigation. So really easy to browse through to feedback. And if I go down here to the community section, you'll notice I have the Hub Premium ability to see who's signed up for my community. So that's a really, really nice feature. If I have people who followed my site, they'll show up here and I can message them and provide updates. And I can also force users to be followers if I want to. There's a couple of use cases for that. Finally, kind of the heavyweight section of figuring out your site, which we'll talk in a lot of detail about, is the content library. The content library is where you decide which items are going onto your site and are going to be associated with your site. And the content library has a nice twin here in the view of your site, which is the search results page. So you can kind of notice that I can decide the content I want to be on my site here in the content library, and then I can see it on my site itself. So coming back, if I go and view the site, you can see I have this kind of home layout. I have that search page. I have my content library. It's like kind of giving you a basic layout. One last thing to mention is there's this pages function here. So this is how I can make sub layouts for various different audiences. They keep the header of the site, but they give you a new layout. So if you're trying to build a complex website, this is a great way to do it. And if you're ever trying to get away from one site and go to another, you can use this darker blue menu to kind of browse the global objects. So if you're in Hub Premium, this will say initiatives, but otherwise it'll say sites, and I can come out to this menu and be like, oh, great, there's other sites here to look at. Let me jump into one of those. And now I can look at a wholly different site and get going with that one. So I showed you a lot. What happens behind the scenes when you make a site or initiative in the application is we make a bunch of items and groups. And they each have different purposes. The site application or hub site application is the primary item for that home layout. This also is the item that we do OAuth with, so you can host it on custom domains. We make a number of groups by default. The content group powers that content library and the catalog of items that is attached to search. Please note you can bring on your own groups via the group manager. So if you already have organized your portal content into groups, you can pull those groups onto your site, no problem. The core team gives users edit access, so it's how I can basically bring in other people to help me edit all of the content of my site. And if you have premium, we make another group to house the community users and other ArcGIS Online users who are interested in a specific site. So more of those engagement features. Every time I make a page, I get an item, and every time I make an event, I get a group. And the group for the events is the same thing as followers. It's so we can track who's interested in what. So hopefully it gives you a little bit of an overview. If you wanted to have a list of it, this is the same information presented that way and just gives you an example here on the right as to what you'll see in Portal or the home application of ArcGIS Online when you create something. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about the basics. Let's move into the next section, which is the curation. And I call this the hard part, right? Like you have to decide a bunch of things up front about your site once you know the application. So I recommend kind of having a blueprint or having a plan. There's this like old scuba diver saying of plan the dive and dive the plan. So I definitely think you should take a few minutes up front to decide, the audience and the purpose of your site. Here are some ideas. So many people start using the app to share data kind of privately or publicly for that non-GIS audience. That actually doesn't require too much of a time investment. Once you get the data set up and shared and all the groups wired up, they get the site and you can kind of move on with your life and do other things for a while. Some people treat it like a set it and forget it. It's not always a good idea to do that. People usually will kind of shy away from web properties that look like they're going stale. So you might want to kind of periodically plan on revisiting those sites. But it's a kind of a more on the lower time estimate in terms of building a site like that. If you're trying to do a project or a long-running program or something that's complicated with phases that happens maybe over months or years, those sites will take more time to develop and it'll take a lot more time to pull in all the content you need for that. And if you're trying to do a deep two-way engagement where you really attract people and you kind of keep the content moving and you get their involvement and they attend events, that'll take more of your time to coordinate. Not necessarily in the site design area, but more time kind of coming back to the app to make sure that it feels like a vibrant, alive place that's engaging. And again, go check out that other talk if you want to see more about how to build those. So once you have your purpose in mind and you know your kind of audience, I think of it as like, okay, you've designed a beautiful room and now we get to decide all of the different stuff we're going to hang on the walls in that room, all the different pieces of content we want to share. So this is a kind of age-old Portal or ArcGIS Online workflow, which is making items, and you can do that in Hub or online or in your portal, and then sharing them to the group, the content group that is pre-made with each site, which then shows up as you saw under the search results of that site. So this is the kind of workflow you're going to be doing to pick the artwork that's going on your wall, so to speak. If you're sourcing data from the platform, obviously, work with your departments, work with your GIS colleagues, search your portals, or upload your own data. Very, very easy, to come into the platform here and upload spreadsheets, URLs, links, PDFs, PowerPoints, you name it. So that's one great way to do it. If you're trying to do something a little fancier from a development perspective, we have this open source library called Coop that I'd like to plug. This is basically a stateless adapter from many different data sources that goes through to GeoJSON, so you can feed it into the platform. You can also use it in reverse. You can go from the platform back outward to different clients. This is what's powering Hub's download system. So even though it's open source, it's definitely not unmaintained, and it's a vital part of the Hub infrastructure. So using it is going to gain all the benefit from the Hub team's work at making sure everything is functioning properly. We have a number of providers. So you can see here all the different types of things you can connect to, like a Google Sheet or an S3 bucket or another open data provider. A lot of different options out of the box right here for you. Cool little story here, like when Hurricane Harvey happened, everything happened so fast that we had a bunch of data going into a Google form and into a Google Sheet, and we wanted to be able to analyze that in the platform. We were able to use Coop really quickly to build an adapter from a Google Sheet into the platform so we could get it into all of the spatial analysis tools and all the other things that we wanted. So pretty easy to deploy, and it can run in something like Lambda, so definitely give it a look if you're looking for something to automate the data flowing into the system. If you're sitting here and you're like, I don't even know what data to share, and I'm a local government, the Sunlight Foundation publishes this list of open data sets. Even if you don't want to share these publicly, just having these all centralized in your portal or ArcGIS Online is a really good practice and can benefit your organization. So even if you don't care about sharing all this out, it's still a good idea to find these data sets, digitize them, and make them easy to discover internally. And if you're in that enterprise space, an enterprise site is a great way to feature all that for that non-GIS chunk of your organization that doesn't really want to traverse the GIS, but has interest in, let's say, one of these data sets. So that's a good list to go from. So how does this work mechanically? It's going to happen all in that content library. So if I go to my content library, you can see I already have some content in here, but I can use this add existing content to find items that are in my organization, ArcGIS Online, or my portal. And I can basically browse for items that I can see. So I can pick random items here. And what it does behind the scenes is it shares that item to the group, and it will now show up. If I X out of here, you can see I now have more that city art project data right here. The nice thing about all the data in Hub is that they each have its own little lightweight item details page. If the data is spatial in nature, you'll get a map. You can peruse the data. Users can download it. So it's, again, that GIS light. And if you don't like any of the metadata at any page and you have access to, you can log in and edit some content and then jump back to the content library. So this is that kind of hard part of like, I'm curating the data and I'm trying to get everything onto my site so that people can peruse and browse. And potentially you could have thousands of pieces of content. The other thing you can do here, as you can see I've done a little bit of, is you can rename these tabs. So this is like just the data. Maybe you don't call it data sets. You want to call it, because it's a non-GIS audience, you just want to call it data. Or maybe it's not documents, you want to rename and call it like presentations or PDFs. Let's do PDFs. You can actually make the little search facets, these, or we call them collections. You can make them these configurable things that match the type of data that you're sharing on the site. And if I X out of here, you notice that it reflects on the search page as well. This is coming to enterprise in 10.8.1, but it is already available in ArcGIS Online. So it kind of gives you an idea about that. So next part is pretty boring, and I apologize for that, but it's very important. Having housekeeping and thinking about the quality of your data and the metadata about that data is just so critical. These steps won't just benefit your Hub or enterprise sites, they'll benefit your entire portal. Someone once told me great content makes great sites, and that's true, but it also makes great dashboards, great story maps, great experiences, you name it. So I'm sorry to lecture some data points at you, but they're really important stuff. So first and foremost, you should humanize your attributes of your featured layers with attribute aliases. The difference between the left and the right columns is that the right one is something other people that are not in GIS can understand, whereas the left is like the census tract codes, for example. This can be done in Pro or ArcMap with the field alias option. So go ahead and do that. Turning on editor tracking is a good idea because it gives more metadata about when the items change and the data changes. And enabling metadata on your portal or ArcGIS Online is a good idea too. You can check the box in the items section of your org settings or your portal settings, pick your standard, and then once you do that and you set metadata in the home application, you'll be able to get this link that launches you into the metadata from that site's page. So, you know, that data set for crime incidents, I can read more about the abstract as to what it is and who makes it. Really, really useful for providing clarity about each of the attributes and things like that. So for large data, if you're going to try to host a lot of data here and you want people to download it, try to simplify and reduce the number of vertices, which is a good idea. For server, age-old thing that Esri people say, latest is greatest, but we are definitely optimized for 10.5 and greater. 10.5 was the version of server that added the stats function and the counting functions. So without that, a lot of features won't work. So if you can get beyond 10.5, obviously do that, but really going to be struggling if you're below that version. Don't alter the default maximum number of records returned from server. That can screw with our download system, so don't do that unless you have to. And if you do, definitely test out your downloads. And it can be tempting when you're working from Pro to publish all of your layers to one big service, but that can cause problems, and you'll be missing out on item metadata and thumbnails and all sorts of stuff. So organize your layers into a service that represents each data set. You're going to get more control in the long run. And if you've got to do it, try to keep it under 20 layers to a service for performance reasons. So I get this question too. If you want to do a hybrid, you can do that. You can run the data in your server in Enterprise and then register those items in online and use Hub to run the online experience. That's a good idea because you can keep the data connected to the system of record that may be on your servers, but still leverage the web tier in the SaaS product, which absorbs the brunt of, you know, a lot of things and gives you caching and things like that. I would advise you, if you're in this mode, to consider still syncing some data to ArcGIS Online if it's large or popular, or if you want those extra download options. Because, you know, it's generally a good idea to not beat up your own servers, but to use, you know, ArcGIS Online to absorb that. So re-hosting the data using Portal to online sync or something like that is a great idea. And I always like to tell people, like, are you hoarding credits? Because if you're hoarding credits, are you ever going to use them? It's kind of like potions at the end of a video game. Like, if you didn't use it throughout the game, then what was the point? So ask yourself that about credits. This is the point of credits, is you know, don't keep it all in Enterprise just so you have an amazing credit balance. This is you know, hopefully a reason to use it that'll decrease your IT, you know, headache if something becomes popular overnight, and you know, you won't have to deal with servers going down. I get asked this a lot. How do I download imagery? We don't have a native imagery download function yet. It's on our backlog, but something I've seen people do, which I really like, is using Web App Builder or Experience Builder to make an imagery explorer and downloader app. So you can actually, in your kind of content library, rather than sharing the raw imagery to the site, share this app that lets you download the data. And then the users can filter to the right address, for example, click on the different images that they want, download them each, and then they'll be in good shape. If you're interested in seeing some of these examples, go to hub.arcgis.com, which has a search for all public sites, and type in imagery download, and you'll see some of these that are screenshot right here. So if you're now got your data, it's got its attributes, everything's good, and you are doing open data, consider licensing that data, because if it's not licensed, chances are academics and journalists won't be interested in it because they'll be worried about your lawyers. So if you're looking for a licensing model and you don't have access to a lawyer, I recommend Creative Commons. They have this great choosing thing, which lets you answer some questions. So you can do that with your boss. Once you answer the questions, you get a Creative Commons license, which is a well-established legal way of licensing information. You can copy that, put it in your item details page under the terms of use, and you get a badge on that page on your site. So it's all worth it, and people recognize that and will be really comfortable with using your data if you do that. Custom licenses are also supported. You can write whatever you want in that box, and we'll display it. So if you do have an army of lawyers behind you, they can, you know, advise you on this, and you can put in everything that they say there, and they'll be happy, and everything will be good. One note here, we are moving away from HTTP orgs in ArcGIS Online, so that has a big implication for you. We're going to be HSTS on September 15th this year. You need to scan your online content, look for HTTP URLs. You need to make sure your enterprise hosted data supports HTTPS, because after this date, ArcGIS Online will no longer be able to work with that for security reasons. There's a nice tool at trust.arcgis.com that will scan your ArcGIS Online instance for references to HTTP URLs across all of your items as an administrator. So give that a look and be ready for September 15th. Okay, so boring part is over. Nice job. So do all that and you will benefit everybody using your portal. So now we get to move on to bringing life to your data. And I call it content curation part 2. You've done the data work. Now we want to make it interesting. So it's a little morbid, but we want our one hub to have many faces. We want multiple ways that people can experience the same information. If you just put all of your data on a site, you're only getting at a subset of types of thinkers. Like you're only going to get the kind of person who thinks about data and uses data, whereas a lot of people don't always think that way. So I'll give you a good example. The reason we're recording this right now is because there's this virus going on, and we have this hub site hosting information about the virus, and we want people to look at this dashboard. This is like the main way we intend for people to consume this information. But it's not how everybody thinks. I sent this site to my dad and he didn't get that. He scrolled right past it. I watched him do it, and he started looking at some other stuff. And what he ended up finding to be the most insightful was like the immersive things like story maps and other more visual things than just an embedded dashboard. So he was really interested when he found a story map on this website. So it just kind of gives you an idea. Give people a number of different ways to experience the same topic, no matter what it is, because you can jump in, they can look at something, be like, ooh, like this is way, way more approachable. I can actually read top to bottom all about this this crisis, and I don't have to look at a dashboard. So one hub, many faces. Bring life to your data. If I'm going to give you a bunch of ideas, but effectively try to check a box in each of these 4 areas: inform, listen, convene, and monitor, just like Justin was showing you earlier. So if you're informing, we have a lot of great apps for that. You can use the hub site, you can use maps and scenes, experiences, story maps, urban projects, whatever they are. Pick the best kind of look that walks users through the information, and always consider mixing and matching because of different people thinking different ways. So use an experience to jump people into the immersive feature by feature look at a data set. You can use in those experiences, put an address bar so people can find themselves. That's very popular. If it's static data, you can use analysis to make it more interesting. And I definitely recommend a story map on almost everything because it's going to attract that person who wants to see all the content portrayed in a narrative in order, rather than kind of a la carte buffet where you can walk in at any point. So put the why behind the site, put all the data that's out there, or at least a good healthy example, and link into the site as appropriate to get access to more content. There is this nice feature for doing this. You saw it on that coronavirus site. Here it is in the screenshot. It's on by default on sites, but it's called app pages, and it basically will embed the app that you're previewing from a gallery or a menu link underneath your header, so you can keep the context of the site while you explore different ways of looking at the information. That's on by default. It's in the settings sidebar, and if you don't like it, you can turn it off as well. So that's informing. Listening, we want to use something like Survey, Crowdsource Reporter. The Quick Capture app is really good for this in specific cases. Or Geoforms. You can listen for data, you can listen for opinions, you can help schedule your events with surveys. Again, check out that engagement talk if you're interested in learning more about how listening can be made as a powerful tool to engage your community. Convening is a good idea, especially if it's a public site trying to reach out about something. Hub Events is a premium feature, but it lets you launch events that each have their own page. And you get access to extra layout cards that let you embed them on your site to get people physically together about something and can take your engagement to the next level. You can also brag about your engagement like these folks have done in Escondido. They're bragging about how many people they've signed up and all the different projects they're doing and all the events that are upcoming. So you can kind of channel that FOMO to get people to sign up or do something. Monitoring is the last step, which just shows you're tracking something over time. Ops Dashboard or Experience Builder are great for this. You can also embed stat cards or chart cards. We'll look at those in a little bit. And you can also monitor yourself, the whole site, using something like Google Analytics in Hub Basic and Hub Premium. So here's just a few examples of those: the stat cards, chart cards. There's an example of the dashboard. And there's a Google Analytics. You can see the literal monitoring of how many times people are looking at your site and what they're finding interesting using Google Analytics. So if I'm going to do that in the app, how does that happen? Well, lots of ways, right? You can come into the content library, and we have this new menu that you can click New App, and you can in here make an app of your choosing. The nice thing about doing it from Hub is it takes care of all the sharing to the right groups to get the app onto your site automatically. So you can kind of pop in, let's say make a story map about what this app is all about. Like, why are we sharing this info to you today? Okay, that's terrible, but we're going to publish it anyway to my organization. And basically put the life, give that experience of the data in different kind of shades using this capability. Once you're done with that, you can kind of pop back, which is nice. And you can see that there's my app, and it's now shared as part of my site. And it's really nice. It shows up under, the site itself over in the apps and maps section. And then, yeah, if I had that app pages on, I can just jump into it, and there it is. So bring some life to your data. I definitely recommend making a bunch of different ways of experiencing the content. All right, so we've done all the work of making the data really good. We've made the apps that make it more interesting. Now we get to put a bow on it. We get to kind of tie all that together and make a simple but powerful layout with the site editor. So I always tell people you have 5 seconds to capture someone's attention with your site. So you gotta make it personal, let that top image really speak for you, immediately encourage some sort of participation, and try to keep it simple. You notice in that coronavirus site, that dashboard was prominent because that's what they wanted you to experience. So I recommend the one thing you want people to do is highest on the page. And you gotta pick one. It's gotta be quote unquote above the fold. You get the imagery up top, you get what the site's about, and then you can put the one thing, right there, visual up front, because everything else is for the people who are bought in and are interested in other ways of looking at it or really want to engage. So try to pull forward that number one action you want people to accomplish within your site. And this is the same for enterprise. If you want people to know about the download capabilities or something like that, you want people to access a specific layer or specific map, or they want to see one of those apps, put it prominently on the site. But only use one. So these people wanted us to look at this chart. These people want us to search and then maybe follow. You can sketch this. So tips from a designer, come up with a plan, design what you think the one thing is, do this as a good stakeholder exercise, and you'll be in good shape. So now you have your sketch and you have your primary objective. Now you can get into the mechanics of building the site itself. And there's a lot of different sections to consider. The first is the header, which is the very top of the page. It contains kind of the navigation system and the branding. The header and the theme are a good place to start to figure out how we're going to blend the site into its own, into some other web property or something like that. And then we have rows, and the rows really serve as chunks to hold the cards. And we can pick however many rows we want and then fill them with the cards, which are the different layout pieces that we can choose from. And then last but not least is the footer, which is where you can put legalese and stuff like that. So Hub and Enterprise Sites is built using Bootstrap 3, and Bootstrap is predominant CSS system. It gives you a bunch of free functionality, so to speak. About half of the web uses Bootstrap. And the way it works is you have these columns of 12 columns that you can place cards into. And as the site goes onto a mobile phone, those columns will stack and reflow. And you have these different grid sizes, which can tell how big or small the content should be. You can also use this to show and hide things. If you're not familiar with this, you should go to the website here and get familiar with the grid system. Even though our UI makes it easy to work with, it's a good idea to know this if you're going to be doing deep customization. So here you can see our UI adjusting the number of columns in use by default for a desktop view of these 3 stack cards. And you can see mousing over the seams let us choose how many columns. So really easy to modify through Bootstrap Grid. Just to give you a demo of that, let's jump back into our site here. I think we were, oh yeah, right. Where am I? Go back. So I go back into the content library. I can use this to get back to my site. And this is where you see as I move my mouse around, I'm getting the controls, and these are cards and these are my rows here on the side. And if I add some other cards, like I want to put an image next to this search bar, can dock it there. And if I want the image to be smaller on the desktop view, I can do that. So, if I wanted to upload something, I could. Once I save that, if I wanted to view it, I can. Notice as I go mobile, eventually we'll restack down. And Site Editor does this as well, so you get some editing controls too, but this is effortless, right? You can just design your layout and the Bootstrap grid system is going to make it mobile responsive as long as you use the out-of-the-box cards. So that's really, really nice. All right, so let's go through those cards and give you some tips on each one. Not a guide of how to use them, but more of some extra little insights that go with each card. So first is setting a theme. Find your brand guidelines. Don't pick a dramatic font, even if you like it. It's hard to read. Test every page on your site. So don't just make the design choices here and just look at the WYSIWYG editor that's up right here. Make sure you view the site and go down to something like the search page and make sure the theme works here too. Then go into a data set and make sure the theme looks good here as well. And if you pass all three of those places, you're in pretty good shape. The only other place to watch out for is on the site itself. If you have any pages that are being used, apply the same theme. So notice this button is that green shade. It's getting that from the site it's being used from. So definitely check all that out. There's a list of those. And you can always find somebody in the organization whose job this is and ask them what to do. So the row card we talked about, tips and tricks here is you can override the theme that you've just picked just for a specific row to make things pop. And you can also do edge-to-edge background images, which let you get that banner effect. So setting an image on the row gives you that background image, and you can do a nice parallax effect too. As you scroll, the image can stay fixed and it can look like panes are flying down in front of it. So check out the row images if you're interested in those sorts of effects. Wide versus box is an opinion, but I like wide for rows containing something full screen-ish, like an app, a map, or a video. And I like box for other content like that image in that search bar we were just looking at. And the final cool thing is there's this thing called row class name. So if you're trying to do some really cool CSS, down here in the appearance section at the very bottom, we have this CSS class. This is going to let you target that row with CSS and do really, really nice things. So we'll look at that in a little bit, actually right now. So one example of that is if I want this row to be hidden on mobile phones, I can use a Bootstrap class and save it. And what's going to happen is as I minimize this down to mobile, the row just vanishes. So you can apply classes that come out of the box with Bootstrap, and that's really, really convenient. So that's a good idea if you're interested in something like that. The text card gives you the most advanced layout choices. I say deep custom happens here. This is how you can visually edit HTML. You're going to want to use that bracket code mode, and there's some Bootstrap text examples and other examples on Google. Effectively, this is the most customizable card because you can just literally write code right into your site. This is going to be where you can find the greatest power, but also the greatest responsibility, so to speak. And you can also insert some Bootstrap examples, which is nice because then you can jump into code mode and see how they work. So, this is going to be how you customize the site more deeply. Here's that hidden class that I just showed you. Good idea to show and hide rows and do things like that. You can also use that on your custom HTML to get better mobile support. The other one that's good to know is image responsive, which makes the image fill the Bootstrap container and respond to the changing shape of the container as it goes down on a mobile phone. So really useful classes. If you're not sure what I'm talking about or you're looking for something specific, Google Bootstrap 3 and then the name of the thing you're trying to do, and you'll find some great examples on the web, like Bootstrap 3 dropdown. Good example. I recommend you test your custom HTML and your site in general for accessibility, which is at A11Y. There's contrast checking is a good idea. Also running a Chrome Lighthouse audit is a good idea because it'll give you a score and will give you suggestions. The other thing to plug here is the Axe extension. It gives you more information in your Chrome inspector. If you're able to put that on your computer, you'll be able to test, and it'll help you remember some best practices. The image card is pretty self-explanatory. You don't want to use it if you're trying to get edge to edge. You just want to use it for that image next to that search bar. Watch out for HTTPS, as I just mentioned earlier. The scale image to fill is that image responsive, and you'll have to see how that works to understand. But basically, it'll fill the container, and then the image will shrink. So it has a focal point if you're trying to center it on a specific part of the image as it reshapes and looks on the phone and looks good on the desktop. And don't forget your alt text. And keep the sharing level of the site or page they're attached to. So you could put sensitive information like financial information or screenshots here if you want to, and the site is private. The images aren't going anywhere else except for the item that they're attached to. Where to find good images? You probably own some, so start there. You could also screenshot your own content. I recommend Unsplash and Pexels, spelled there, P-E-X-E-L-S, because they don't require attribution. You could also use something like Flickr, which does, and that means you have to put something maybe in your footer for that. Same thing with the Noun project. If you don't pay for them, you have to attribute them. So you can use your footer for that if you're interested. So then the other area of the cards is like showing some of the content that you've already curated, but on the layout. So I kind of break this down into these 3 blocks. I have lots of items. Use the search and category card, because that pushes the user into the search experience, which is a great thousands of items searching UX. Like, it's really, really good. Don't do a gallery card with yard sailing amounts of content, because it just doesn't get engaged with. If you have a small number, like on that coronavirus site we were looking at, use a gallery card. And if you're trying to get people to experience that one app or map, use an iframe, app card, survey card. One of those will be great because it'll let you embed them directly. Okay, so we showed hiding with the rows, but you can also do some cool fancy things with the gallery card. So what's nice is if I have a gallery card, I can pick the literal items that are showing on it in manual mode. So if I wanted to pick like, more apps here, I can add it and I get 3 cards now. This will honor the visibility settings of those items. So if my user can see all 3, I'll see all 3. But if I can't only see 1, then I will only get a single card. And as you saw, the gallery card also is responsive, so it'll reflow back into the right shape. It also will collapse into nothing if there is nothing returned for a user. So you can hide content, quote unquote, in plain sight for users of differing access levels. All right, extending the hub is a popular thing. You guys are in the deep custom talk. The iframe is the best way to do it if you want to use JavaScript, because you'll have to host the JavaScript and the HTML and the CSS for your widget somewhere on the web. And once you have it hosted somewhere, you can then iframe it in, and you can do a great many things. I've seen people iframe whole business intelligence suites like Tableau or Power BI this way. I've also seen people build specific one-off things. If you're in enterprise and you're interested, some people piggyback on the web adapter and host their content there. So that's an idea. And this is an example from Johns Creek where they just wanted to show a dynamic HTML table. And we didn't have support for that, so they built it and they hosted it somewhere and then they embedded it. The chart card is a good way to do charts, summarizing your feature services that are on server version 10.5 or greater. You can also extend this. There's a library called Cedar, and it has a specification that's JSON, and you can pick your service and customize your chart. And this is basically a union of ArcGIS and a library called AM Charts. So you can take a look at those libraries and build some pretty powerful data vises without writing a lot of JavaScript code. You can just configure your JSON and you'll be able to have a nice custom chart. Summary stat card does the same thing as the chart card, but it just counts or averages or does stuff like that. It supports filtering. And I get questions sometimes like, oh, I wanted to do some really cool styling. I recommend you actually iframe a 1 widget ops dashboard instead. So this is like 8 ops dashboards. But what's nice about that is it'll mobile responsive reflow down on a mobile phone and you get the full power. So if you're looking for a really extendable summary stat card, I would use ops dashboard in 1 widget mode and then embed it in your site. The media card is good for YouTube or Vimeo simply by pasting a link, and it's pretty self-explanatory. Social media card is the same thing, can accept any social feed or Twitter stream or anything like that. And the banner card, I'm not even going to mention it. I think you should use a text card and a search card instead, because you'll get a more extensible user experience. This is one of those cards that we sort of have a love-hate relationship with it. We know some of you love it. So it's here. It's a Jumbotron card with the search and a heading. But I think you're going to get a more precise design if you use a text card and a search card. Next, let's talk about choosing a header system. At a high level, you want to use your site header to integrate multiple sites into one logical site. Maybe internally, this is a SharePoint or a Wiki or Confluence. You can use your enterprise site to blend that into one of those existing SharePoint sites. But it could also be kind of a corporate or organizational overall brand property. Like for Esri, it would be Esri.com. So you can use your header in this way to blend in so that users will stumble into the GIS part of the website and not really feel like they've left anywhere and gone somewhere different. You can also use your header to feature multiple languages. This is where you write an exact replica of the site in each language that you want, and then in the header have consistent links to those different language sites. This can be a useful way to translate your site's content into multiple languages. Taking a quick look, the options for out-of-the-box headers are standard and prominent, which gives you different layouts here. You can choose how wide the content goes. You can set a logo, as well as position some of the information. And then I really like this menu bar links area for the private kind of content. This is really nice. If the user can't see an item, it just doesn't show up here. And this has a nice mobile reflow pattern. If you're interested in this sort of thing, you can write your own custom HTML and CSS. There's a great summary of this feature where we go in depth in the Getting Started with Hub and Enterprise Sites talk in the latter half of that talk by developer Rob Stylberg. So please give that a look if you're interested in writing your own HTML. He's got a lot of great tips for you in that video. So let's move on to Hub Premium. These are the features that allow identity-enabled sharing to your external community. So we'll talk through what those features are and how it all works. Behind the scenes, when you license Hub Premium, your existing ArcGIS Online organization, this blue one here on the left, or your employees org, gets attached to a whole new ArcGIS Online organization for your community. And you can brand your community, just like Justin was talking about earlier, however you want. The idea here is we're insulating the community members from your staff organization's data and content. And they have a separate pool of things like credits and storage and access. And you can set different sign-in rules for your community org. On the left-hand side, this is where all of your data, apps, and maps will continue to live, and you'll continue to use users from this org, but you'll be able to work with the users that are signed up on your community side. So you have to kind of think about, how will I sign people up? Do I want them to come to me in some cases, or in other cases, you might know who they are and you'll invite them literally. You will literally have a login for your employee org and an administrator account for community org, and you'll be able to basically manage these users as if they were just an extension of your digital workforce. So as I mentioned, there's two ways to get users. You can either have them sign up or you can invite them in. If you sign up, you can have them do it via Google or Facebook or email account. And if your country or your region has a community identity provider that supports SAML, for example, like a France Connect kind of thing, you can set that up here as well. And then having an identity in that system will allow them to get an account in your community org. You can, of course, not do any of that and decide, I already know who I want to work with, and in which case you'll log into ArcGIS Online as that community org administrator and you will issue invitations. And this is very popular for like nonprofits who know who they're already going to be engaging with ahead of time. I get this question a lot. What can they do? Well, they're creators in the platform. So you got to kind of think broadly. Here's a couple of ideas, but there's a lot of different use cases. It's just like they had their account and it could be shared to. So they can receive access to private content. This is popular if you want to share sensitive information. You want to be sure the recipient is who they say they are. They can contribute to your organization's data. So you could share access to feature services, or you can give survey forms to people you trust so that they can make edits and it's updating the data inside your organization. They can attend events and receive notifications. Similar, they can follow. They can also even help you edit your website if you find somebody who knows HTML or CSS or wants to volunteer. They can also help write apps, and they can also manage your events. But this is not the full list of things they can do. They can really do anything that the platform allows. So I use this as an idea generating tool, but don't use this as an authoritative source. So let me show just a couple of how that manifests in the hub. So at the overview, if I have Hub Premium like I do on this organization here, I can see all of my community members down here. I can also go to a list of all of my community members, and I'll see I have 178 community members, and I can peruse them. I can also log in, and this is where that second sign-in happens. So if I have a community administrator account, I'm actually double logging in. And when I do that, I gain access to all the private community members that don't have their profiles set publicly. And I can also do things like downloading their contact information or messaging them directly here in the application. So at a high level, you can kind of see how many users you're signing up for in your community here on the community overview. If I go to settings, this is where I can use my double login to configure the sign-in experience for both organizations. So by this hub, for example, I want people to sign up with Facebook, Google, or email. So it has both these buttons prominently. It also has this no account, create a hub community account, which leads you to this form. I can also include, my own custom legal terms of use. This is what needs to be checked when somebody signs up for an account. So this is where your legal team can help out and write a specific criteria. And finally, if you're interested in it, you can set a logo. Some people miss it, but it's right here. You can expand the logo and you can change the Esri logo to be your brand's. So this is where you can say, if you don't want this to be enabled, you can turn off all of these settings. And this basically makes it just so that you have to have an invite to the community org to be able to log in, and none of that other stuff really applies to your sign-in. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave it all on because I want to be that kind of two-way engagement hub. And within each site, you can have people click the star that's on the site, which is really nice. So if I view this site and let's go down to mobile, you can see I have this core team messages can unfollow their initiative. This is where I can follow or unfollow. When people do that in the community section, I'll get people who are signed up here. So let's take a look at what it's like to follow. If I go to this site in incognito, oops, if I go to it not incognito, and we're going to sign out. If I click follow over here on the left, I can sign in with my Google account, which I have already created one, but this is my community user, Google, and now I'm following this site. Back on this side, as the person working for the city, if I log out and log in, you'll notice I now have a follower, and I can do all the same kind of member messaging and administration things here. What's nice is followers are in a group, so you can now share to your followers. If you want to send special items or updates to just the people who are interested, you can do that here. And as well, you can also force people to be followers by coming to the add members and basically inviting people in automatically. So that gives you a little bit of overview of following. Events works very similarly. You saw we made an event earlier, but if I have a draft event or upcoming event, I can sign up people through the event itself and require registration, and that will also put the users in a group and allow me to email them details about the event. So very similar kind of mechanic as following and events. In addition, you may have noticed, maybe you didn't, that the list on the left has a few extra cards if you have Hub Premium. They are a follow button that can be explicitly laid out on your site, as well as a featured event, as well as a list of events. So just kind of exposing that. And this button, that attend button, or clicking into an event and following can create an account if you've enabled that self-sign up in your hub. So we did that already. We're gonna skip that. So now if I wanted to bring others in to help my team out, we have this technique called teams for doing that. Every site comes with a core team, and the core team is who can edit the site or page, and they also get access to any other content shared to the core team group. So if I come over here to teams, I can go into my core team, and these are all the people who are able to edit my site. So you can come in and actually add anybody from both your organization or the community to edit this site. So this is where you can bring in kind of community collaborators. As soon as they do and they land on the site, as long as they've accepted the invite, they can click the pencil, and then they'll be able to get into the edit modes. So it gives you a little bit about core teams. Supporting teams is this idea of sharing specific content to specific users. So maybe I want to share just a page to my police department. I can make a supporting team for them and then pick any number of items to put in that supporting team so they have access to it. The thinking behind this is that you have the general public who's anonymous, who's maybe one way engaging with your site. What you really want to find is the actively interested, the people who are willing to receive updates or subscribe to something and actually lean in a little bit, so that from there you can find the actively engaged who will be able to really help out, almost act as an extension of your workforce, And then you can, of those people, find the ones you trust to give special access to things. Teams basically lets us give the right access to the right level of people. So we imagine that the actively interested will sign up at the minimum and maybe attend an event. We imagine that the actively engaged will likely be a part of the supporting teams receiving special content, and the trusted collaborators are those members who are part of your core team there in the middle. And what's nice is your sites give that kind of focus, that it's not this like generic high level access to lots of information. You can focus them to that one specific action you want them to accomplish, but now you can do it in different layers depending on trust and level of identity and level of engagement from the people you're trying to reach. So yeah, I think I showed a couple of these areas as I walked through this, but effectively, if you think about my time here on this site getting more and more mature, if I'm here anonymously, I'm probably in that far right-hand camp. Whereas if I click follow and I sign in, I've probably moved into that actively engaged. Maybe then you wouldn't want to probably add a community member to your police department, but if I wanted to make a supporting team for them, I could come in here and to log out and log in. And I can basically sign in and share just certain content to that community user. So what I would do for that is go into the supporting teams feature. In the upper right-hand corner, I can make a team, basically sharing to Graham, and I can add my, community version of myself basically to this team, which is this guy right here. So now he's on there, and then within that, I can go into my content, and I can now share specific items to my Gmail user. And now he's that kind of engaged person that's leaning in a little bit more than before. If I really trust myself, which I think I do, I can go into the core team and I can actually add myself as a core contributor, which now allows my Gmail user to make edits to this initiative and site behind the scenes. So that's kind of the full extent from end to end of how you can demo people up from no access all the way to full access. It's also worth mentioning that the gallery in Premium has a lot more options for starting points. So make sure you give that a look. It's back in the new site area. So if I come over to overview and I click new, I have this more broad gallery of Esri available initiative templates that are ready to use in these topics, and it's always growing. So for monitoring, just recommend that you do hook up Google Analytics to your sites. This will give you an idea of which data sets are most popular, which pages are most popular, where you're getting your traffic from, a lot of great stuff. You can also set goals in there to make certain actions more important in an analytical sense, so that you can see if you're improving the clicks on those actions or if it's trending down, and helps you make smart website adjustments. Integrating and automating, there's a couple of options here. These are just ideas, but you can automate the invitation process to your community org using a survey 123 and a webhook or some sort of vetting process. So that's pretty cool. You can automate the removal of accounts from your community org that's unused for a period of time. So if you want to periodically purge users out of the purple organization, you can do that. And you can sync content too if it's community created and you want it to be copied into your organization for safekeeping. You can do something like that. These folks did that first suggestion of, they made a survey, like an application form. You click on, you take the survey, and then once approved, you get an invite to the community org. So that's a pretty cool way to do an advanced vetting process for community users. If you're looking to automate the creation of sites or pages themselves, we have Hub Pi, which is fairly new. It supports both enterprise sites and Hub, and will hopefully be really useful at doing some fancy things if you're trying to create hundreds of sites programmatically or move them between environments. We were also working on ArcGIS Hub web components for integrating into your content management system of choosing. Right now we have things like follow buttons and attend event buttons that help you create community users from a third-party website solution like WordPress, but we're going to be continuing to add to this repo. So please check this out if you're looking to build a direct integration with some of this functionality. Finally, let's land on some resources. If you're looking for more inspiration than what Justin covered, check out our gallery page on hub.arcgis.com. If you are interested in following some more on the Rails lessons, go to learn.arcgis.com and check out our Learn lessons and paths for ArcGIS Hub. And if you're looking for any of these resource links, they are in your overview there at the bottom, so be sure to click on them. I definitely recommend, if you're interested, to give us user feedback, join the user lab, because we're always looking for participants there. If you're interested in learning more about accessibility and how to make your HTML and your custom headers, for example, accessible, we've written up a great resource here for designing your sites for accessibility. Thank you so much for watching. We look forward to hearing from you on GeoNet.